Hello and welcome back to This Day in History for May 2nd, 2024. Not that it really matters, but it is May 2nd. Currently, it is an overcast day. It's not raining. It's, not cold, but I don't know why I'm wearing a jacket. Mostly because I thought it was probably going to rain and I just didn't want to get wet. So, it's a fleece jacket, so it soaks up water really quick. But at any rate, so this day in history, May 2nd, it has a lot of interesting things that have happened today. In fact, again, more things happened today than I had than I was able to fit on my notepad here. But it's a good thing, right? It means that I have more to pick and choose from, which is what I did. Let's start with birthdays. So on this day in 1729, Catherine II, she was the Empress of Russia. Her birthday is today. She wasn't very old when she passed. It says that she passed on November 17th, which I only know that date because a good friend of mine, that's her birthday. So she's only like 69 years old or something like that. So she wasn't, by standards of that day, of that era, that was a longer life. But by today's standards, that's still fairly young-ish. It's older, but, when you got people that are living in, average into their late 80s and 90s, that's 69 is still, still kind of young. But at any rate, in 1860, Theodore Herzl, he was a Australian Zionist leader. His birthday was today in 1860. In 1892, we just talked about him the other day. Manfred Baron von Richthofen, otherwise known as the Red Baron, his birthday is today. We talked about him the other day. I'm sorry about my car squeaking. Incredible human being, really. I have a lot of respect for him, simply because he had the audacity to tell Kaiser Wilhelm II that it was an unwinnable war and that he should sue for peace. That's kind of a baller act right there. To go tell your supreme leader that, to his face, bold-faced, to his face, and say, we're going to lose. That's... I have bad respect for that. But yeah, his birthday was today. In 1972, if you are a wrestling fan, Dwayne Johnson, otherwise known as The Rock, his birthday is today. 1975, if you are a fan of soccer, if you are familiar with the Spice Girls, he is the husband of Sporty Spice, I think. I don't know. David Beckham. It's his birthday today. So, yeah. In 1519, Leonardo da Vinci dies. Didn't say how old he was, because, well, I didn't catch that. On this day in 1536, Henry VIII, the shyster that he was, he has his second wife, Anne Boleyn, committed to the Tower of London. And it's, historically speaking, it's agreed that she was probably innocent, but and that he, in all likelihood, he trumped up the charges so that he could get himself out of the marriage. Because divorce was a taboo thing back then. Although he did end up, I think he divorced one of his wives, and the church they frowned upon that, and he kind of separated himself from, I don't know, he was just a really bad guy. At any rate, Anne Boleyn was put up on charges of adultery and incest, and she was locked up in the Tower of London, later to be executed by beheading. And like I said, he was a real swell guy. He would get his, I'm sure. If not, he'll get his in the afterlife. 1611, the King James Version Bible is published for the first time. In 1803, the Louisiana Purchase. If you know anything about history, you know that President Jefferson had, in a manifest destiny, where it was determined that it was our God-given right to expand coast to coast, and part of that required the purchase of the Louisiana Territory. So through by request to Congress and congressional approval, Jefferson buys the Louisiana Territory from Napoleon Bonaparte. He had asked for the equivalent of what would be $15 million. But the total purchase price was, as I recall, was less than $10 million actually. What it ended up being was that the cost of the territory, of the land, was about less than 3 cents per acre. And I believe it was he had asked Congress for $15 million, and it only cost less than $10 million. And what he did with the remainder of that money that was used, that's what was used to fund the Lewis and Clark expedition. Stephen Ambrose wrote a really good book about the Lewis and Clark expedition, and it goes into the history of how Lewis and Clark were picked for the job, who Lewis and Clark were. He utilizes their personal diaries, to tell this story of this great adventure. So yeah, that was in 1803. In 1920, the National Negro League was founded by Rube Foster. Now, what that was is that it was the first African American baseball league. You got to remember that this is during a time of segregation, where whites and coloreds, they call it coloreds, could not or would not play together on the same field. It wasn't until Jackie Robinson would come around about 20 so years later, 21, something like that. 1941, I believe, is when he broke the racial barrier there. It wouldn't be another 20 years before you have someone brave enough to take the racial heat and break that racial barrier and become the very first African American baseball player. Again, that was 20 years after the fact, but 20 years before, this league, this African American league was, the National Negro League was formed, and they were pretty successful. In 1935, this takes place in Luzon, Philippines. Peasants rise up in an armed revolt, and what they were fighting was there were some oppressive land tenancy laws that they didn't agree with it, so they engaged in an armed revolt, and that was that. I didn't really read on what happened. I assumed that they were successful, or they were put down. I don't know. I was pressed for time, and so I just thought it was interesting because I have friends in the Philippines. I'd like to visit the Philippines someday, maybe. I don't know. In 1946, now this is not to be confused with the other prison break in Alcatraz in the early 60s. But in 1946, there was 6 inmates attempted to escape Alcatraz. A full-blown riot broke out, and it took a couple days to quell. It became known as the Battle of Alcatraz, and so imagine it got pretty nasty there. But that was in 1946, long before the famous prison break where the 3 guys escape Alcatraz, and whether they made it or not, I mean, we'll never know, I guess. I mean, there were some people that claim that they did make it, that they sent, supposedly one of them sent a letter to the FBI saying, "Ha, made it, see you, bye, deuces." I don't know though. Yeah. So in 2000, on this day in 2000, President Clinton announces to the public that there is a working GPS system. And I remember this because I was working at Kmart at the time. But he announced that there is a downgraded civilian GPS system that is now going to be available to the public. And any of you who use MapQuest or Google Maps or the Magellan GPS, all that is based on what happened on this day in 2000, 24 years ago today. That technology was released to the public, and we all use it on a daily basis. We use it on our phones. We use it on GPS units that you plug into your car to help you navigate. It's been a very useful tool. I remember early on that there was concern about it, about how accurate it was, and there was it was inaccurate within about 3 meters or so, and that was done deliberately. They didn't want you to have such a precise thing that you could make a makeshift guided missile and park something up the president's nose or something like that. So it was deliberately designed to be about 3 meters off, so that so the terrorists couldn't get a pinpointed, precise, exact GPS point for nefarious reasons. So I do remember that. I took a GPS course at work. Actually, that was at Weimar. And I left Weimar in 99, and so they had rudimentary GPS units. But, this thing said that it was in 2000 that Clinton had announced this GPS thing. So, a little bit of conflict there. Someone's not right. On this day in 2011, there was a special operation that happened in Pakistan. Navy SEALs were deployed into a compound where a high-value target was found, was eliminated, and was removed from the compound. And that individual was Osama bin Laden. That is what was reported to the American public. I remember that night. I remember it was about 9 o'clock at night, and all of a sudden my father called me and says, "You need to turn on the news." I turned on the news. I was over at my aunt and uncle's house at the time, and that's when my grandfather called and told my uncle, turn on the news. And we turned on the news. And so it was after midnight. It was about 9:30 p.m. Our time. So it was about 12:30 in the morning there in Washington, D.C. And I remember the news conference. President Obama had come on the news and said that they had they killed Osama bin Laden. Now, there has been some conjecture and rumor that Osama bin Laden was actually killed months, if not, years before in by a bunker bomb, and that everyone just kept it hush hush so they could keep the war going on. I don't know if that's true or not. I could honestly say that I tend to believe that we did get bin Laden in 2011, simply because you're not going to have Navy SEALs claiming something that they didn't do. That's not their style. So if a Navy SEAL comes forward and says, I bagged this bastard, then I'm going to believe, these guys have an incredible amount of integrity. They're special operators. I mean, their reputation is on the line, so it's not like something that they're not going to be so inclined to want to lie about something like that. So that's my take on that. So you can be conspiracy theorist and believe the other, or you believe what the government feeds you, I suppose. But it is what it is. So on this day in history, we bagged bin Laden in 2011. So speaking of this day in history, that concludes May 2nd. Thanks for joining me. We'll do it again tomorrow for May 3rd. So take care, be blessed, and have a great day. All right, bye.